Assalamu alaikum, ladies. Alhamdulillah, I finally did it. I actually wrote a book. It's dedicated to all the single Muslim mothers out there, hence the name How to Be a Single Muslim Mum. Inshallah, it's available as an ebook, paperback, and it will be available as an audio. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah feekum, sisters, for the support. Check out the link in the description to get yours. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of the Niqabi Diaries.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So yes, we have another episode of the Niqabi Diaries today, and alhamdulillah, we have with us a return guest, Sister Lorna. She's going to be talking about something which I think is important, especially in today's time, and it may be, I don't know, it's a bit controversial for some people, so don't get put off, inshallah, but she's going to educate us with some things so that we can clarify some issues that is, bothering, or I think is, kind of become mainstream now with a lot of young people these days, and there's a lot of confusion around the issues of transgender and the LGBT community, and there's a lot of other things. There's so many different kind of names that people are calling themselves, and like different kind of things. So we're trying to talk a little bit, not completely about that, but she's going to talk to us about something called asexuality. So I don't know if the viewers have heard about that before, but I found this very interesting because she's going to explain, inshallah, what exactly asexuality is. And I wanted her to talk about this because I've come across some hadith, or even talks from some scholars pertaining to marriage, which I feel is in relation to this, actually. So inshallah, she's going to tell us, firstly, if you can introduce yourself, sister, and then tell us what is asexuality, inshallah.
Sure, inshallah. So I'm Lona, and you've had me on here before talking about my niqab story. I am a revert from California, a Mexican American. I reside back and forth between Mexico and the US, and I happen to be asexual. And I'll go ahead and explain what that is. But first, I want to preface everything just by saying I don't speak for all asexuals. I'm just giving my own experience and opinions here, but I do hope that it's enlightening, at least in terminology of what we're talking about. But all of my thoughts and views and opinions are really my own. It's interesting that you mentioned, like, the LGBT community and the gender ideology and things. There are, groups out there that kind of profess to kind of speak for everybody that falls into those categories. But asexuals, I don't consider myself part of the LGBT community, although some people do consider asexuals to be part of that community. I really don't. In fact, I kind of see it as kind of going in exactly the opposite, fighting for like the opposite of things that asexual people would want, because right, most of like LGBT is kind of fighting for acceptance of, I don't want to say like deviant, but, in Islam, what would be considered deviant, but, sexual behavior or sexual behavior that's outside of the traditional, heterosexual relationships. And asexuality, we're falling the other way, where it's like, we don't even want anything to do with any type of sexuality most of the time, at least I don't. So I don't consider myself part of that community, but ever since I made the video talking about how I kind of relate to transitioners and kind of like I understand where a lot of this transgender confusion is coming from, at least from the point of view of female to male transitioners and detransitioners. I definitely feel like that's something that I could have fallen into when I was younger, had I been exposed to that kind of thinking, and had I not found Islam instead. So I will give the definition of asexuality first. And I just want to let you know, this definition is actually not something that I wrote, but I took it straight from the AVEN website, which is actually a website, kind of the only kind of group that I know out there that is kind of like a place where asexual people did kind of convene online in the internet. It's the Asexuality Visibility and Education Network, and it's called AVEN for short. And so I took this definition straight from their website. I actually did find that website when I was a teenager, and that's how I kind of learned the term for what I was called. But I definitely knew how I felt before I, found the term and found the website with the online community of asexuals. So I'll go ahead and read the definition that's given on that website, which I agree with. It says, an asexual person is a person who does not experience sexual attraction. They are not drawn to people sexually and do not desire to act upon attraction to others in a sexual way. Unlike celibacy, which is a choice to abstain from sexual activity, asexuality is an intrinsic part of who we are, just like other sexual orientations. There is considerable diversity among the asexual community in the needs and experiences often associated with sexuality, including relationships, attraction, and arousal. While estimates for the asexual proportion of the population are limited and may vary, the most widely cited figure is that we are roughly 1% of the population. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, is that we don't really experience sexual attraction, but that's not the same thing as celibacy and not the same thing as sexual dysfunction, which when I was younger, I had people sometimes accuse me of thinking like things don't work down there or something. That's not what it means. I'm a 100% biological female, and I mean, I have a son now, of course, so everything works just fine. It doesn't mean that. It just means lack of sexual attraction. It doesn't mean lack of libido or sex drive either, because you actually can have a sex drive and still not feel sexual attraction to anyone. And I know that for some people that doesn't make any sense, because those two things are connected for a lot of people, but for asexual people, they're just not connected. Having a sex drive is kind of just like having an itch on your body or something, but it doesn't make you want to do something with anybody else, you know? So that's kind of the issue for asexual people. Likewise, as an asexual person, you can feel you can not feel sexual attraction to someone, but you can choose to engage in sexual activity, right? Just like, I'm sure we all know that back when homosexuality was much more stigmatized in the West, there were people who were gay who still got married, gay men who got married to women and had children and, had families and everything. And then once this kind of LGBTQ movement started taking off a few decades ago, married men would come out as gay and like divorce their wives and leave their families and such. And, turns out they were in the closet for pretty much their entire lives. Like that, you can decide to have sex even without being sexually attracted to somebody, right? So asexuals are still capable of having sex. We are still capable of reproduction. We're capable of everything. Everything works just fine. We just don't experience the sexual attraction part. But I will mention that not all asexual people are sex repulsed. It's kind of a spectrum of how people feel. Like from my time on the Avon website and reading other people's experiences with asexuality, there's a pretty wide spectrum. There are people who are totally sex repulsed, meaning like even the thought of sex is just like absolutely disgusting to them. They wouldn't ever want to engage in something like that. And it's just like, a complete, wouldn't even consider it. And then there are people on the other end that aren't repulsed by sex. They're just uninterested, right? So it's a spectrum of uninterested to repulsed for people. So you can fall anywhere on that spectrum and still be asexual. The common feeling among us all is just that we don't experience sexual attraction. And that's about it.
Okay, so Swana, like that's a much bigger explanation than I was anticipating. Okay, so from my understanding, okay, this is what I thought asexuality was, which I think is kind of what you said anyways. The whole thing about just basically somebody who is not sexually attracted to anybody, they don't feel sexual attraction. So would that be correct if I said that?
Yes.
Right. So, but at the same time, you mentioned that you do still have a sex drive. So like, you get that kind of, you can have that itch that, you have a desire for sex, but you, at the same time, not to the extent where you'd want to act on it, basically.
Well, I wasn't talking about my personal experience, just in general, that for asexual people, there is kind of a spectrum, right? So, asexual people can still have a sex drive, yes, and some do and some don't, and to what extent that is, yeah, but it's just that even if there is a sex drive, from what I've read, even people who say that they consider themselves, like, I guess sexual in their own aspect, they just have absolutely, like, it's not related to other people in any sense of the word. Like even I've read on the Avon website, like asexual men will be like, yes, they have, a sex drive and libido and everything, but they literally just don't feel attraction to either women or men or any desire to do things with other people.
Okay. So obviously I'm quite interested in this topic because when I listened to your video that you've made about it, I was interested because obviously what you mentioned, just now in your introduction was that, with the whole gender ideology that's happening at the moment and transitioning specifically, especially when it comes to the young girls, you feel that there could be some issues there, which maybe that some of these young girls are feeling, or they feel that they are asexual perhaps. And maybe there's some confusion there because they're not like behaving as other girls would be behaved. Because the reality is, we do live in a, like, especially in the West, we live in a very over sexualized society where sex is something that's pushed onto young people at a very young age. You know, they're not allowed to really, they don't have that kind of space to just enjoy their youth, you know, and innocence. You know, sexual intimacy and, you know, sexual relationships are, you know, are shoved in your face from very, very early on, whether that's in the home or
Exactly.
outside of the home and on the television. So I think that, you know, I was interested in this topic specifically because, you know, what came to my mind when I was listening to your video that you posted on your channel, and I will put the link to that in the description box, inshallah, so that anybody that wants to have a little bit more kind of insight as to your experience, that we can, you know, kind of get an idea of where you're coming from. Because I think it's important to talk about this, because there's some, you know, Muslim families now who are having, you know, issues with some of their, you know, young people, who they
Hmm.
might have, you know, some confusion. And it could be like a, you know, what came to my mind is that maybe it's some kind of what's the word? It's like, it's what's the word when you're kind of going against something? It's like a rebuttal against, you know, the over
Yeah.
sexualization of the society. You know, this that a child maybe feels repulsed against, or it's like kind of off-putting to such an extent that they become like almost immune to it. And if I don't know if
Hmm.
that makes any sense to you, but you know, so it's like, you know, instead of feeling, oh yeah, I want to go out and join what everybody else is doing, and, you know, start having sex at a young age, and, you know, or make them try to make themselves more attractive to the opposite gender or whatever gender, they feel like, oh well, actually I just don't want anything to do with this. I just want to be a normal person, live my life, and just, you know, be focused on other things and enjoy other things in life, because there are other things in life apart from sex. And I feel that with the LGBT, you know, the whole agenda that's going on, sex is a very kind of main focus. I could be
Hmm.
wrong, but I feel that
Exactly.
that seems to be the issue from what I see, because they're trying to, like, you know, make children from a very young age push them towards, they say, like, identifying as, you know, something. And it's just like, for
Hmm.
young children,
Yes.
this is not what young children, you know, that's not what they're interested in even thinking about, you know, like, that's just, it's not normal or natural for them to kind of be thinking that they're just children. They just want to have a childhood, and that's it. They don't, there's no like, oh, identify as this or identify as that. I remember when I was like, you know, like near 20, or I'll say 17 years ago nearly, I've got two children, two elder children anyways, a son and a daughter. And my daughter's the eldest, so she was about 3 when my son was born. And I remember, like, when he was maybe 1 or 2 year old, and obviously you're having a girl first, you're going to have all those girly toys, you know, dolls and other
Hmm.
things, you know. And I've never
Yeah.
been one of those parents to kind of insist that my children play with particular toys, because I feel
Hmm.
that, like, children, you know, they're innocent anyways. And, you know, if you kind of try to, you know, push something on them, or say, well, you know, especially when it comes to toys, which are, you know, they're just innocent things anyways. Like, if you kind of, you're trying, if you insist they play with certain toys and say to them, no, they shouldn't play with certain other toys, then it's like you're kind of, you know, you're giving them, like, it's like you're, you know, there's some people, they naturally rebel against what you want them to do, or what,
Hmm.
like, you know, the status quo kind of is. So instead of that, I just let my kids play with whatever toys they feel like playing with. So I remember, like, with my son now, obviously he's the younger one, so he was playing with some dolls or something like that of my daughter. And I wouldn't go out and buy my son dolls. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go out and buy him dolls to say, oh, here's these yours, go and play with these. But because, you know, when you're a parent and you've got kids, you'll, you know, boys and girls mix. I don't see an issue with a boy playing with a girl's dolls,
Hmm.
you know, and or a girl playing with a
Yeah.
boy's, I don't know, tool set or something like that, whatever, you know, because it's just like, they're kids, they're going
Hmm.
to play with a variety of things. And, you know, naturally children, they mimic their parents, especially they play like the mamas and dadas game and this kind of thing. So it's kind of like, for me, I see it as very natural and normal. Obviously
Hmm.
there can be an extent to which things can be like taken out of context, but I think as long as you don't interfere with the children's play so much, naturally they will just kind of, you know, gravitate towards what they are really interested in. So I was never worried with my son when he played with, you know, my daughter's dolls or whatever, because she used to also play with his cars and stuff like that. Never had any issue with them. You know, it's not a big deal. It's part of life, isn't it? Like, fathers do raise raise children as well. So, like, I think for children, your small children, they see dolls as more like babies or something like that, isn't it? So, as I said, I never said it had any issue with it. And my son, naturally, he grew up liking things that, you would say boys normally like. He didn't grow up and think and ask me to buy him dolls or like anything like that, or wanted to wear dresses or anything like that. But at the same time, I said I'd never like made playing with the variety of toys an issue. So, I know I see now with some parents online, they're actually pushing for their, if their son wants to play with the doll, they'll push that on their son. So it's like they'll go out and buy their son like a collection of dolls and say, oh, well, these are your dolls. Now you can have these. And then the more the son plays with them, then they try to push something else in him, try to push something else in him, until eventually, they're going to say, well, oh, he's a girl. I could tell like he doesn't identify with being a boy. So, these kind of things, I think, parents need to give their children space just to be children and not
Mhm.
try to push any kind of ideology on them, regarding gender or this sexuality, because it's a very dangerous game. But what I wanted to ask as well, when you was talking, what came to my mind was when you mentioned that there are some people who are asexual who the thought of sex just repulses them, and some of
Mhm.
them the thought of sex doesn't repulse them, but they just don't want to engage in it. They're not like really interested. So my question is, can somebody become asexual? And what I mean by that I is that basically, is there like from your research that you've done about other people, with regarding asexuality, is it a case where there's some people who they have a reason to be repulsed by sex? So maybe they had some kind of negative experience in their childhood. It could be possibly abuse, or something that isn't abuse, but something which kind of made them think about sex being something disgusting or repulsive. And some in some cultures, for example, especially with females, they're taught that sex is something which is like sinful, or there's something that you shouldn't enjoy as well. So, and or something that's going to be something that will cause them great pain to engage in. So, from that aspect, in some communities, where there's women who they don't look forward to sex and they don't want to have sex and they're afraid of even having sex. And I'm not saying that's the same thing as being asexual, but what I'm saying is, do you think there's some kind of relation in these two kind of situations?
So that's a very good question, and I would make a distinction between, because here what we're talking about when we say asexuality is the lack of sexual attraction. And so that's why we really have to
Hmm.
understand what we mean. And it's difficult because people who are heterosexual, or even homosexual, any people who are sexual on the sexual side of the spectrum, probably don't even see a difference between sexual attraction and sexual desire, right? Or libido. Like those things are so heavily connected for sexual people, but for asexual people, they're not connected. So it's like, if somebody is, because I think like what you're describing is somebody who's frigid, right? Somebody who's like afraid of
Yes,
sex, or
yes.
had like a bad
Hmm.
experience with sex, or was abused or
Hmm.
something. That is not the same thing as being asexual, because that person
Hmm.
is probably, could be a heterosexual person. Like a woman could be totally normal heterosexual, like she likes boys, but had, some trauma in her past. And so she is frigid, and like she,
Hmm.
maybe gets a boyfriend or something, or gets into a relationship, but then finds that she, can't, like, or is really terrified of
This is
having
afraid.
sex or things like that. Yeah, that is not the
Hmm.
same thing as being asexual. And for asexual people, like it's really kind of the opposite, where it's like there's no trauma surrounding sex, I would say. It's just the
Hmm.
fact that the sexual attraction to somebody is not there. It's just, and it doesn't
Hmm.
happen. We don't feel the same way that other people do towards the opposite sex or the same sex. And so,
Hmm.
but on the topic of could somebody become asexual, I would still say yes to that, if you believe that sexuality is fluid, which I think most people do kind of think that there is, that your sexuality can change throughout your life. At least, in the LGBT community, I've definitely heard this, and amongst asexuals, that like maybe people are, like they say, they're confused, right? Or they're questioning. And as they grow older, they realize,
Hmm.
oh no, I definitely like men or women, like you can either become more sure of it as you get older. And in fact, I saw a detransitioner, a male to female, detransitioner, who went through the whole transition to appear as a woman, is a biological man who went through the whole transition to appear as a
Hmm.
woman, thinking that they were entire life thinking that they were gay, and then and that they didn't want to be gay. They did this whole transition, and then after the transition, now when they appear 100% as a female, even though they are not. Oddly enough, they are attracted to women now, and they're like, yeah, I could have just not done all this and been a straight guy, but an effeminate straight man. But unfortunately, because I went through this whole process, now my body's kind of destroyed. So it's like people's sexuality can evolve over time. So in that sense, I don't think that it can jump totally from one side of the spectrum to the other. But if you're already a pretty non-sexual person, like you experience it, but it's just not, you're not super hypersexual, it's possible for you to become asexual, I do think. And I hear that, you hear with women that they just get less, sometimes they get either more interested or less interested in sex as time goes on. Like, I suppose it could, yeah, I suppose it could be a thing, but then we also shouldn't confuse that with, well, maybe it's just a medical issue. Maybe it is a libido problem for them. Maybe it's not, something that is directly related to just their sexual attraction, their sexual orientation. So I do think it is possible to move a little bit on the spectrum from asexual to hypersexual, but we should make a distinction, though, that that's not the same thing as I was sexually assaulted and now sex repulses me and now I'm asexual. That is not asexual. That is, a heterosexual person who had some sort of trauma that you can go to therapy for. I don't believe, even though people have, obviously accused me of that and said, oh, just go to therapy and you'll get over that. I don't believe that my asexuality is something that I developed or, out of some sort of trauma. I do just think that that's just the way that I am. I've always been that way. And it's been obvious to everyone around me too. Just like sometimes it's obvious, that there are more effeminate men, or you can tell that, a child is maybe same-sex attracted from like a younger age. Sometimes they grow up to be same-sex attracted, sometimes they don't. But there are, it's something that you can sometimes point out in other people. And my friends and family, they kind of knew. And when they found the word out, they were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, you don't, like, when I did decide to get married years ago, my family was shocked. They were in absolute total shock. They were like, you are going to get married, like, to a man, like that's going to happen. And I was like, yes. And they were just like, they were in total disbelief, because they were like, you have never, ever shown any interest in the opposite sex at all. And so it's just, yeah, I mean, it's a big question. I would say it's important to make a distinction between those two things, but could you become asexual? I think possibly yes.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I mean, what I find it interesting, especially from the Islamic perspective, and there's quite a few different takes here. But one of the aspects that I found interesting was, I've heard scholars, like, for example, talk about when it comes to the issue of marriage itself. Like, marriage is a sunnah. We know that marriage is a sunnah, right? So, but for some people, marriage becomes obligatory, and for some people, marriage becomes like haram. Okay, so it depends on the person. Like, so from some, for example, some people that they say that it would be haram for that person to get married is somebody who they basically are like maybe a very hot-tempered person, and they know that they can't live with, for a man, for example, he can't live with a woman because he'd be prone to like maybe beating her or something like that. He's not somebody who has any patience, and he doesn't actually feel that he has a need for marriage, so he's not getting married so he can even fulfill his sexual desires. He doesn't feel like he has this need. And so if he gets married, it would be like oppressing somebody, because he's not getting married to fulfill any kind of sexual desires. And on top of that, he's somebody who doesn't have patience with people, and doesn't like, he's not somebody who can live, with people in general. He would make that person's life hell. So that person, would be like haram for them to even try to get married. And on the flip side, somebody who a marriage would be obligatory for is somebody who they do have strong sexual urges, and if they don't get married, like, they're literally at risk of putting themselves in the way of committing zina, basically. So, and we know that obviously marriages, in Islam, we can only have sexual relations within a marriage itself. So
yes,
there is like a spectrum there. And the aspect that I found interesting was that, the scholars, they say like that, there's they acknowledge that there's some people, they don't have any need for marriage. And that could be from the sexual aspect. It could be from the aspect that they're already taken care of financially, so they don't need it. They're part of a family, or a big family, or they're the kind of person they enjoy spending time by themselves, for example, or they're busy with other things, or they have certain lifestyle which doesn't actually facilitate them to be able to be married, because it would be oppressive to the other person. So there's different there's different aspects to it. There's many reasons why somebody might not be suitable for marriage, because obviously marriage is something you have to prepare for. You have to give somebody else their rights. That it's not just about receiving from somebody else. You're getting married, and you have to fulfill the rights of another person in the process. So in this aspect, if somebody, for example, is asexual, I'm not saying that obviously you've been married yourself, so we know from you're an example that somebody is asexual may want to get married and may feel they have a need for marriage, because marriage is not just about sex, it's about other things as well. So leading to my next
Yes.
question, like what kind of what kind of reasons would an asexual person typically, do you think, like kind of what kind of things would drive them towards seeking a partner, seeking out marriage? What kind of things would be kind of a priority for them with that regards? And I think this is important to talk about, because unfortunately, especially now in the Muslim community, marriage, when people talk about marriage, it seems that it has been just reduced to fulfilling sexual desires, which definitely is a big part of that, but there's a lot more to it as well. And because if there wasn't, then people who are older wouldn't need to get married either, really, because like you said, like it's common knowledge that when people get mature in age or older in age, they have less sex drive, or they attraction to to the opposite gender. They have that, they don't have it as much as when they was young, basically. Like this kind of sexual attraction, it goes down naturally. That
Yes.
happens to most people, not everybody, but most people. So but we still see
Yes.
that older people, they have reasons for getting married, and often the time the one of the reasons is because they want somebody as a company to spend time with. So from your
Yes, a
perspective, and
companion.
from what you know about the asexual community, like what would be kind of the main focus for, or what would somebody who's asexual looking for marriage, what would be the things that they're specifically looking for in a marriage?
It's a very, very good question. And I would first like to thank you so much for prefacing that question with your initial, what you said about that marriage actually being haram for some people and obligatory for other people, because I have actually never heard that take. Pretty much all of the sheikh that I have heard talking about this subject, or all of just the general, belief held by the Muslim Ummah, is that, like you said, we are stressing marriage so much, and marriage is stressed. I know
Mhm.
that Rasulullah said that, marriage is half of our deen, and we also have the saying that, I believe he said, whoever shies away from marriage is not part of my people, so this is a very important, like, I have had so many people tell me that when they tell me that I'm, basically a sinner for not being married right now and not being interested in getting remarried. Like the amount of men in
SubhanAllah,
my
how can you
inbox.
be a sinner? Oh my
Yeah,
God,
like
like
the number of
SubhanAllah.
men in my inbox telling me that it's haram for me to be single, and haram for me, like when I, everybody, because of course you're a Niqabi, I'm a Niqabi on Instagram, I get, lots of inquiries, and I don't even bother responding anymore, sadly. But when I did used to respond, because I thought it was obligatory to respond to every assalamu alaikum and, not leave people hanging there, it's always a marriage proposal. And whenever I say I'm not interested, it's, well, you don't have to marry me. It's fine if you're not interested for me, but you have to be married to somebody, or you have to be interested in marriage in general, because if not, you're not a
SubhanAllah.
Muslim. And yes, I get this so often. So I
Wow.
thank you so
Wow.
much for prefacing it with, that
Oh,
fact that it is
I
not.
wonder where
Yeah.
those brothers, I wonder where these people and these brothers are, because I was single for more than 12 years and nobody was interested. Like I had very few proposals, in that 12 years, subhanAllah. So it's just,
Oh, subhanallah.
I'm
No,
just
I was
like
keeping
literally,
an Excel file just for my own statistics of like where these brothers are from,
wow,
which percentage of them, like I literally, it passed over like 200, and so I was like, okay, I'm done with this, whatever, and I'm not even responding anymore. And since I
mashallah,
stopped responding,
wow.
yeah, the number of inquiries has just gone down dramatically. Plus, I purged my Instagram the other day and deleted over half my followers, and that also helped. I feel like, but anyways, back to the topic,
SubhanAllah.
was that, yeah, I get this a lot, and I rarely speak to somebody with that actual knowledge that says, no, it is not obligatory for you to be married 100% of the time, or, and the fact that it is actually haram, like you said, for some people who, I don't want to I don't want to, be biased towards one gender or another, but as you spoke about, somebody who is not capable of fulfilling the rights of their spouse, which I think happens, is nowadays is happening
A lot.
oftentimes from
Mhm.
men, that they cannot support a family or don't have any interest in supporting a family and are literally just looking for sex, this is not
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of marriage, and it's very, very, the sole purpose, as we said, of marriage. And it's very, very sad that so many people have that mentality these days. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I have kind of, completely, not totally shut the door, but, kind of, I don't want to say given up my hope of, but my hopes of getting remarried have been greatly reduced because of the fact that it is so sex focused nowadays, but, so going into the question, which I think is a wonderful question, what are the other reasons for getting married? There are a bunch. And first off, I think, and this is one of the questions that, that I think that you had for me, so I can kind of combine these into two, but, on the topic of, are there other qualities that asexual people are attracted to other than sexual appeal? Yes, 100%. You can feel attraction that is not sexual attraction. You can feel like a platonic attraction to someone. And here's the
Yes.
kicker, and I hope that I don't confuse you, because this is where people are like, what? You can feel romantic attraction to somebody without feeling sexual attraction to somebody. Okay. Those two things, especially in the LGBT community, I feel that this has been completely conflated, the two things. Like, as we said, like the LGBTQ community, it's all about sex. It's about, accepting these non-heterosexual sexual relationships, and yet they have these slogans
Yes.
like "love is love," and and I'm like, wait,
Exactly.
are we
And it's
talking about
nothing to
love
do
or
with love.
sex? Right, exactly. Like, we're talking about
Exactly.
two totally different things, and this is why asexual people really don't fit into the LGBT community, because we're like, yeah, love is love, but that's not sex. Like, that's a totally different thing. And
Exactly.
within the asexual community, so here's where it gets a little confusing. There are kind of subcategories of, so I'm aromantic as well as asexual. So we call ourselves for short aro-ace, meaning like I also, and apart to not feeling sexual attraction, I also don't experience romantic attraction to people. But there are people who are asexual but hetero-romantic or homo-romantic. So they still are prone to having a romantic desire towards opposite sex or the same sex, but that doesn't ever, it's not attached to a sexual attraction, right? And so that is something, you could still have romantic feelings for someone, or you could just have platonic feelings for someone. And like you say, like for elderly people, who want companionship, if there's people in their 90s, like they're probably not, spending a lot of time in intimacy, but it's like maybe at that point in their lives, they're just very alone. Their descendants, I'm sure they've had kids and families already, and their families are living their own lives, and they don't want to go to an old folks home. And it's like, well, you can have a companion of somebody of your own age, so you can have attraction to somebody that is not sexual. And so that's one important distinction, and that can be.
Can I just ask as well, because you mentioned being the aromantic. So what would you define as romantic?
Oh geez, that's a kind of a tough question, because it's like, I can't find a non-cheesy way to explain romance, but literally just think of every like romantic movie or romantic, things that you would consider to be romantic, just
Yes, yes.
and it's hard to put a finger on it, because it's, there's so many different stereotypes, but any one of those stereotypes, I just don't lean towards any of them. And like this is kind of here's a example from myself, from my own life. When I did get married, and I was 19 and he was 20 at the time, he was super romantic, and he was always, oh, I love you, and I'm so glad I found you, and you're blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, thanks. And I just, it's not like I'm, don't care for him. I do. I mean, I decided to marry this person, but it was totally a decision. It was like, I put all these factors together and I decided I'm going to marry this person. I married them. And it took me 2 months after being married to even say I love you to him. And it wasn't intentional. I wasn't trying to be mean. It was just like, it's not something that comes from me.
It
It's
wasn't
not like,
coming naturally. Yes.
yeah, and even with my own family, like I said, they all knew that I was asexual even from the beginning. When I didn't start saying I love you to my own family members until way into my 20s, I believe. And they were shocked. They were like, oh my God. And I was just like, yeah, it's just, I just don't naturally feel like, and obviously with your family, it's not romantic, but even just like extreme love,
The
it took me a
platonic
long
love.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. it took me a while
Okay,
to get there.
that's really, really interesting, because mashallah, you're Latina as well. I'm not trying to be
Yes.
stereotypical, but like literally, I think when most people think about romance, like, and love and this kind of like, like Latinos, like you guys are like top of the range when it comes to this thing. This is like your expertise, right? So
Right, right. Like he knows that
subhanallah, like
French people,
that
right?
must have been really difficult. Yeah, that must have been really difficult for you growing up like that, and kind of having to navigate through that without, like, like you must have literally stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yes, 100%. 100%, which is, we'll talk about this later in the conversation, but that is what, led to a lot of the gender dysphoria as well, and people thinking that I was, possibly gay because those people didn't know what asexuality was, neither did I.
Hmm.
But back to the question that we're on right now, the reason that I personally decided to get married, and why I think many asexual people do want to get married, is many of us still want to have families. I've always wanted to be a
Hmm.
mother, and I think that's a very interesting thing.
Hmm.
Before I even said I love you to my own mom, I knew that I wanted to be a mom,
Hmm.
which is
Okay,
it's
alhamdulillah.
not something yeah, it's not something that I can explain, but alhamdulillah that I was given that, maternal instinct of like, I want to be a mom and I want to have a family. And I came from a pretty broken
Hmm.
family and I always wanted to do things right. And so from the time that I was young, I was like, I am going to get married and all of my kids are going to come from this one person. And I'm going to have like, a mom and dad and a family. Like I always knew that the nuclear family was like best for people. And so,
Hmm.
and I have always wanted to adopt as well. That's always something that's been in my heart as
Hmm.
well. But I also
Yeah,
wanted to
me
have
too.
a child of my own. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
Inshallah, I'll be able to do
inshallah.
that one day. But
Inshallah.
it's that was my reason for wanting to get married. And so more so than having like an attraction to this one specific person, it was like, well, I would like to have a family eventually. I'm not going to give birth. I'm not the Virgin Maria over here, so I better,
Hmm.
get married to somebody. And he just seemed like a very good fit in the sense that we were really good friends, and he seemed to be, wanting to be the father figure for a family. We wanted to have a family together, and the repulsion that, because I do feel sex repulsed with probably 95% of men. I didn't feel
Mm.
repulsion towards him, although it wasn't attraction to the point of like, oh yes, I'm sexually attracted
Yes.
to this person. But I thought,
Hmm.
I could, be with this person if they were my husband and we were
Hmm.
trying to have a family. So, that's why I ended up getting married. And that was my personal reason. And a lot of people, when I discovered the Avon website, I read lots of interviews of people who said that they've been in happy, loving marriages for decades and that they are just now realizing that they are
Wow,
asexual.
mashallah. That's
But
good.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Alhamdulillah.
It's really happy, happy for me to see that that was, a possibility. But they said also,
Hmm.
though, that I wish I would have known that, that this was an experience that other people were having so that I could have explained it to my husband, because I just thought I was a freak my whole life, or I just thought, like, I just didn't understand how other women had all these, flings with these games. They would say, like, my friends and my family members, and they would have all these, like, and of course, these are non-Muslim people speaking. They say they have all these relationships one after the other, and they would have this sex drive. And they say, I just have never ever felt that. And I love my husband, and I'm glad I married him, and I love my kids, but I'm glad I know what I am now. So I'm glad that I found this word to describe it
Hmm.
when I was younger. And it also did help me when I got married. I explained, he knew when we got married, and I told him, like, this is the situation.
So
And at first,
alhamdulillah.
yeah, it was kind of hard for, because at first he'd never heard of anything like that. And he was like, so you don't like me? And I'm like, that's not what it
Hmm.
means. It means that I'm not sexually attracted to you, but that doesn't mean that I don't like you. Like, look, there's, hundreds of other proposals that I've
Hmm.
got, and yours is the one that I chose. Clearly, I like you. Clearly, there's something about you that I think is good for my
Yeah,
family,
yeah.
but it's
Hmm.
not that I want to jump into bed with you. Okay. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
hope that answers the question of why people want to get married, if not just for sexual reasons.
Yes, subhanAllah, it definitely does. And I think that, what you mentioned just there is the importance of letting the person know, that, you're that way inclined so that they can understand. Because obviously if they are somebody who's getting married because they really have, for example, a high sex drive, then you wouldn't automatically be compatible then, would you? Because obviously it's going to be a bit of a clash, wouldn't it?
Um, it can be, but it also cannot be. It depends on your level of sex repulsion, because if you're sex repulsed, then that's going to be an issue. But for me, it's not
Hmm.
like, like I said, I was not repulsed by this particular person. So it was like, yeah,
Hmm.
I'll do whatever you want, but just don't expect me to be the initiator, most likely. But I
Yes.
can do,
Yes, yes.
whatever, whenever. And my ex-husband actually
Hmm.
was really hypersexual, and it actually wasn't an issue for years and years. It really wasn't, I don't think it was ever an issue, because he just wasn't repulsive to me, and I enjoyed making him happy. And there's other reasons to
Hmm.
have sex other than sexual attraction. There is, and I do
Yes,
acknowledge
definitely.
that there's intimacy there, that even a spiritual intimacy that can come from that. That's not
Mm.
necessarily not necessarily just a pure sexual thing. And we all know, like everybody knows in the West, that you can have no spiritual or emotional attachment to somebody and have sex with them. In fact, it's practically
Of
praised in our
course.
society, right?
Yes,
Yes, I know.
exactly.
Astaghfirullah.
And you know what's beautiful about it for me, what you just said is like, coming back to like the Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he is, he's warned the women, or even like advised them that they must answer to the call of their husband when he, like, wants to go to bed with them. Basically, he says, there's even a hadith that says that even if the woman is sitting on the camel and the husband
Mhm.
calls for her,
Yes.
she needs to get off the camel. SubhanAllah. So, and
Mhm.
it's like, so but you in your situation, knowing that you have this, you're asexual, you still didn't have any issues because you knew that you chosen to be married. You didn't have any issues fulfilling the rights of your husband while in the marriage. And I think that it takes another level of, like, obviously your, like, dedication and consciousness. And a lot of women who are not asexual at all, some of them will maybe refuse their husbands for, trivial reasons, even, or
Yes.
maybe sometimes even spiteful reasons. But you, who don't feel sexual attraction, made a conscious decision every time, probably, to make sure you fulfill the husband's desires, in order, because you wanted to make him happy, because you knew that this is you, that made you happy, making your husband happy. And I think that's something that some sisters almost forget about sometimes. The right, this is literally the main right of your husband, to answer him when he needs you. So I
Yes.
think that, subhanAllah, like, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from your story, and your experiences, definitely, subhanAllah. So I think, sisters, if you're listening, take notes. I've come across some sisters who I've come across some sisters who they don't want to have sex with their husbands because they don't want to have a shower. Like, and
Yeah, hey,
it's
that's an issue,
subhanAllah,
that I will say that that was an issue, like I got prayers to do, I got stuff to do, but it's the way that I would clarify this though, and because this is with my husband, it was like the situation was very different because I did feel it was, remember how I talked about like there's different types of attraction. So I don't
yeah.
feel sexual attraction, but I can feel non-sexual, just like platonic attraction to somebody.
Hmm.
But it is so incredibly rare. There's probably been 6 men in my entire life that I have thought I could be married to this person and fulfill their needs. Like
Hmm.
6 people in my entire
Hmm.
life that I have met. And most of those people, it was after years and years of knowing this person and having a great amount of respect for this person, and the fact that I was not repulsed by them. But that doesn't mean that I could do this for any man, because the fact of the matter is 95% of men or more do repulse me. And that is the reason why the main reason why I have not gotten remarried, is because I know that I would not be able to fulfill the rights of a man who, wanted. And I've had men, and this is very sad, our ummah is in such shambles right now that I have actually had men that I've spoken to for a long time who are great men. And I actually can say, like, I'm not one of those, like, oh, my ex-husband did this, therefore, all men this. No, like, there are good men out there. And I've had some of them in my inbox that I have gotten to meet and even met in person. And I can say, like, there's nothing wrong with you. You would be a wonderful husband. Like, alhamdulillah, I'm glad that I met you and you're a great friend and everything. But I could not be married to you. Like, I could not fulfill, your needs. And I've had the men actually be like, I'm literally so desperate to have a good wife, and it's so hard to find nowadays. I will literally accept a marriage even if you don't sleep in the same bed as me, and even if you sleep in your full niqab, I would still want to marry you. And I'm like, wow, that's really, really sad that, like, we're so desperate to find a good partner nowadays that you're like, fine, if I have to give up this major huge thing. And I'm like, no, that's not okay. I told them, like, no, I'm not okay with that, because that's not a marriage. In that case, we're just roommates. Like, we're just friends living
Hmm.
together, and that's not a marriage. So I've turned down some really good proposals because of that. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know if I'll be able to find somebody again like my first husband that I was not repulsed by and also felt some sort of attraction to, because it just, you can know somebody for years and have respect for somebody and think this is a great person and would be a great father, but I just could not be with that person ever. And so that's one of the struggles of being asexual. So while you're, I hear so many people, you're not the only one who's told me that. That's like, oh, you're an example. I want a wife like that, somebody who doesn't feel attraction towards anybody but me. And I'm like, bro, you don't understand how hard this is. You don't understand that that's like a
Yeah.
1 in a billion that my
Uh-huh.
first marriage was like a 1 in a billion opportunity. And I'm super glad that it
Hmm.
happened. And I'm super glad that I have my son. But Like the chances of
Mhm.
that happening again when you are as asexual as I am, I just don't see that happening again. So I don't think that people should use me as an example. It's a struggle. It really is a struggle. And I do think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made people sexual. I think that people are supposed to be heterosexual, and that people who aren't
Mhm.
heterosexual, including myself, I think it is a test for
Mhm.
us. It's not
Mhm.
something
Of
that's like,
course it is. Of course.
mhm. Yeah, and that would go for homosexual people who have homosexual tendencies or asexual tendencies
Exactly.
or
It's a
anything
test for
like
them.
that. It's a test.
Mhm. Definitely. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. Yeah, like it's so funny that you mentioned those things from the brothers. I'm sure that a lot of them, when they heard that, those kind of statements from you, they must have thought, oh yeah, this is the ideal wife then, But from your side,
Oh my
it's not
God,
as simple
yes.
as that.
Yes.
SubhanAllah, because I'm sure that that's like literally every real man's dream. They want a woman that's only interested in them, and Islamically, that it should be like that. Technically, it doesn't mean that the women are going to become blind, but this is one of the reasons why we, as women, we also have to lower our gazes as well. SubhanAllah, because obviously, women can be, seduced by other men or something like that, or find other men attractive or more interesting than their own husband. So obviously, that would be problematic. SubhanAllah. So
Yes. And
yeah, I
how
can
it is
see
people,
where the appeal
yeah.
would be. Yeah,
I think that
SubhanAllah.
that's the desire of both men and women, right? We all want a spouse who loves us and
Just
is
us,
not,
yes, of course,
women want that as well. I'll just put that in there. But the sad fact of the matter
definitely.
is when men, yeah, when they approach me, it is exactly what you said. They're like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want. And I'm like, no, bro, you don't
Mhm.
understand. When I say I'm not attracted to men, that includes you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm
Exactly. SubhanAllah.
not. Yes.
SubhanAllah. Okay, so right. So I wanted to ask you. You mentioned a little bit about your, like your relationship with your family, friends, things like that, the platonic side of relationship. So, how much do you think asexuality actually affects those naturally non-sexual relationships? If that makes any sense, like
Yes.
because obviously there must be like it's like there's like a really fine line now. So because obviously if you're looking for marriage, you're looking for somebody who you're looking for that platonic friend, which I think everybody should look for in a marriage anyways, because that's the best kind of person to marry, somebody who you could be friends with, friendship. That's really important.
Yes.
But because there's no sexuality kind of or sexual attraction involved, um how hard is it or easy is it, I don't know, to kind of how do those relationships kind of differentiate themselves from each other?
Good question. So when it comes to non-sexual relationships, I would say that it really doesn't have any impact on, for example, with your siblings, with your children, with your parents. Because I mean, ideally, sex isn't involved in any of those relationships, so it wouldn't really affect. Like, I have the same relationship with my coworkers and my classmates. Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't affect any relationship other than the one relationship that it is going to majorly affect, but this is going to apply, I think, in general. I think this is not specific to asexuality at all. This is also going to apply to heterosexual women. Is
Mhm.
if you have any platonic relationship with the opposite sex, in any situation,
Mhm.
whether that's whether it's a coworker, classmate, or a friend, a male friend that you have, because most of the time, and I think that even the non-Muslims will agree that in most of those situations, the man is usually hoping for more, right? Like
Mhm.
he's in the friend zone, but he's hoping he can jump out of the friend zone. And
Yes, of
as a
course.
woman, you're
Mhm.
usually not interested, right? He's in the friend zone for a reason.
Mhm.
So in that
Mhm.
situation, but I don't think that I'm any different than any other woman. It's just, well, no, okay, I'll take that back. I am different in the sense that I know plenty of men who have waddled around in the friend zone for years, and eventually the woman's like, oh, you're right, you're the perfect man, and then they get married and
Yes,
everyone's
yes,
happy.
yes.
you know that's
Mhm.
since that's not going to happen to me, I'll know rather quickly whether, and it's going to 99.999% of the time it's going to be no, I could never ever have any relationship with you, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
That's something that I just, if I have any male friends, which I do, of course, I live in a non-Muslim country, in a totally non-Muslim community, and non-Muslim everything, and I do have definitely male acquaintances that I'm friends with, and if they make it known which, unfortunately after the divorce, the number of men who, whom I'd known for quite some time who were just like, okay, so who's next on the list for next husband? And I'm like, what? And they're like, can I put myself on the list? And I'm like, dude, there is no list. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work like that. And it's, having to explain to them, and basically like I did with my husband when I just knew that he was, I made sure that he knew beforehand that this is a situation and this is what I'm here for. With my male friends also, just let them know, like, if you're in my life, then it's because you value my friendship, because you value my opinions, because, whatever other reason. But if you're here in the hopes that one day I'm going to change my mind and all of a sudden fall in love with you and we're going to get married and ride off into the sunset, that's not going to happen. Like, it is not going to happen. And that's just, and, after being honest about that, most of the time, men will decide to not continue with the friendship, but sometimes they will. And I do have a few really good male friends who have been in my life for years and years and years, some even before I became Muslim, who do respect the fact that I'm, they're not constantly trying to push themselves on me or anything. And, have cut the marriage proposals and just said, okay, well, I still would like to be in your life. And so that is the biggest relationship. But I think any heterosexual woman would have maybe a similar issue. The only thing is that those men might have more hope because, it does happen. And it happened to my sister recently, my older sister, alhamdulillah, and she's not Muslim, neither is her husband, but they met each other like 10 years ago, and he asked her out and she was like, no. And then, and she was, I remember a year ago when they got engaged, when she was like, I can't believe that he ended up being the one. Like, I had no attraction to him whatsoever. But, after going through 7 other boyfriends for all this time, like, I realized he's the one. And I'm like, wow, it's great for you. But like, that's not going to happen to an asexual woman, most likely. For a heterosexual woman, I've heard lots of situations of that happening, the man who is making it out of the friend zone, but for me, that's not going to happen. And so I just let people know I'm really honest about it. And that's the only relationship that I would say is affected by my asexuality.
Okay, subhanAllah. So would you say that an asexual person can be happy in a marital relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Like I said, on the Avon website, I saw plenty of examples of that. And I myself was very happy until things ended very abruptly. And I don't want to talk about that. But I think, we had a really good relationship until it was after my son was born. Unfortunately, things, fell apart. But I was very happy married, yes.
Alhamdulillah, subhanAllah. Inshallah, khair, sister. Inshallah, you'll find somebody again. Allah will bring the right person in your life, inshallah. Inshallah, subhanAllah. So yeah, that must have been a really big test for you as well, subhanAllah. So obviously you've mentioned some of the challenges that you face, obviously just in finding a romantic partner, or a spouse in this case. I want to talk a little bit more about how you feel Islam has helped you, especially navigating from your youth, because you did get married young as well, alhamdulillah. But when you realized that you had this asexuality, and kind of how did Islam help you kind of navigate through that time? How do you think Islam has really helped you as a woman, just accepting yourself as you are, and kind of just living your life without kind of feeling that that you need to be kind of, I don't know, put into a box or something like that? How has Islam really helped you?
That is a very good question. And I will say that we would probably have to talk about another question before that in order for it to make sense, which is how asexuality leads to gender dysphoria in the first place, right? Like, how are those two things related?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
what is,
Okay.
right?
Yes,
So if I had to explain that, I would say, and this is probably like the hardest question to answer in terms of, this is all coming from my own personal experience and my anecdotal experience of what I've seen around me. I don't have any statistics or scientific evidence to back this up, so don't don't come after me, people. I'm just speaking from my experience here, that I believe, or from what I saw when I was younger, both of my sisters became heavily interested in boys when they were very young, 13, years old, or, whenever people hit puberty and become interested in boys, right? And all the women around me became interested in boys at the same time. And when that happened, I feel like that's when the hyperfeminization kind of started, the hypersexualization, or like the makeup and the form-fitting dressing. And then that's when people really, because like you said, when you were talking about your children, like when you're younger, boys play with dolls doesn't mean anything, girls play with trucks doesn't mean anything. There are plenty of women who are, considered tomboys when they're young, and then they grow up into these, feminine women, and get married and have kids and everything, follow the stereotypical female trajectory, and they like makeup and dresses and stuff. Like most tomboys will grow out of being tomboys, and some effeminate boys just grow up into regular men, but that kind of, when you're younger, it doesn't really matter. And then I feel like once you hit puberty, that's when people start branching off, and it becomes more sex segregated in terms of your interests, right? And in terms of, because your biology changes as well, of course. And so there's things that, men or women are more capable of doing than the other. And that leads to different interests. And it also leads to different hobbies and different ways of dressing and different ways of presenting yourself, right? So that happens kind of when you hit puberty. And so when I hit puberty, and I think, here's my theory, is that I do think that a lot of that is driven by attraction to the opposite sex, right? So like girls don't just decide, oh my gosh, makeup is fantastic and short skirts are fantastic. They start liking boys and think that those things will attract boys, right? So that's kind of, those are the steps, right? They dress that way because the purpose is to attract. And I know all the feminists are going to come after me and be like, oh no, women dress for themselves. No, they don't. Okay. No, they don't. They dress to attract men. And that is the fact. We all know it. As Muslims, we know it, but, it's, some non-Muslim people might not understand that, but they're dressing to attract the opposite sex. And so me, as somebody who that never happened for me, that whole sexual attraction finally hits at puberty, and all of a sudden I want to do makeup and wear, short skirts and stuff, didn't happen. And so I didn't do those. I didn't fall into the stereotypically female category of a lot of things. I was one of like 2 girls in my school that didn't wear makeup, and the other one was a lesbian. So it was like, I wasn't interested in the same things that the other girls were interested in. I didn't have the same type of behaviors that they did either, because as we know, intra-female competition is ruthless, right? Like women, I'm sure we all know the mean girls trope, like we're so mean to each other. And yeah, and all of that too also comes from what you want to root out the competition, right? She wants to be the hottest girl. She wants to be, and so that's when you come into making fun of the other girls and, acting this certain way, that's when you get the attitudes and stuff. And since I didn't have any of that attraction, none of those things happened to me. I didn't have stereotypical female attitudes, interests, or behaviors. Or even presentation, yes, in terms of the fact that I'm 100% biologically female and my body is pretty curvy and, is viewed by others as being very sexual. So it's very interesting. Like I said in my original video, I was in this really hypersexualized body, but me, myself on the inside, I was a totally asexual person. And so that's kind of where the trouble started. And that's how I had problems with gender dysphoria in the first place. And, the words were not in my head, because that concept hadn't been introduced to me, that you could be born, like they're saying in gender ideology nowadays that, oh, you boys can be born in the wrong body and maybe you're actually a girl born in a boy body, and vice versa. Like I didn't know that concept, but if I had, I would have 100% thought, oh, this is the problem. I'm a boy and I'm in the wrong body, because all of my really all of my interests were like, all of my friends were my brother and his friends. What did we do? We played first person shooters and video games and Warcraft and Starcraft, and we rode motorcycles and 4-wheelers around our orchard, and we like that was my interest. I had no interest in makeup and all that other crap that women like. So it was like, being as all my friends were boys and I felt comfortable doing things that society would deem are boy things, that's where the gender dysphoria came in. And I really felt like I don't fit in with other girls, and I'm not a normal girl. And so that's how gender dysphoria happens. And unfortunately, nowadays, that leads people to thinking that, or to thinking that I need to, cut off my breasts and take hormones and start looking like a boy. And that way I can be my quote unquote true self, subhanAllah. But thank God I never did any of that, because I found Islam. And when I found Islam, it did kind of just lay things out. And there were verses in there of, telling women that this is how you need to dress, and telling men that this is what you need, act. And obviously for both genders, we both have our own hijab, and we're both supposed to lower our gaze. Like you said, women are also supposed to lower our gaze. But for me, that wasn't an issue, because I wasn't looking at anybody with any type of desire. But when I realized that like this was Islam's solution to things, is just dress in this way, it just completely freed me from that gender dysphoria, that discomfort, the hatred I was feeling of my own body. And I realized that I didn't have to dress, this certain way that other girls were dressing, which was only going to, bring a male attention. And even though I realized the way that I was dressing was unintentionally bringing me male attention, because if you're incredibly curvy, even if you're not wearing a short, you could just be wearing jeans and a shirt, but if you're showing through, your curves are showing through that, it's going to be very obvious, and it's going to cause problems for a young woman who doesn't want that sexual attention. So Islam protects you from that, and that's how I think Islam would protect asexual youth and get them out of that brainwashing, that brainwashed belief, the mistaken belief that they can be born in the wrong body. And reading the Quran, and just understanding the perfectness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that he does not make mistakes, and there is no such thing as being born in the wrong body. God didn't make a mistake when he made me and gave me double D's and made me asexual. Like, that wasn't a mistake. It was just a test. It's just a test. It's the luck of the draw. Also, so everybody's got different body shapes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I believe in his wisdom that women aren't just meant to cover to protect us from the unwanted sexual advances of men, but also because, and I don't know if you've felt this way as well, but I feel that as a Niqabi, I feel that the more I cover and the more loosely I cover and the better my hijab is, the less I compare myself to other women as well. I just feel like that's my experience.
100%. I really strongly agree with that. I like literally, subhanAllah, like when I see some of the problems that a lot of young girls face with their body and feeling like lack of confidence in their looks and appearance, I just think, subhanAllah, if we was all wearing hijab, like proper hijab, half of these issues we wouldn't even have them. But like, because literally from one woman to the next, you see sisters, even just in a Muslim community, always comparing their bodies to other women and thinking, oh well, I don't look like this, so therefore I'm not attractive. Or this sister, she's more attractive to me because she's got her body shape like this, or her facial features like this, or her eyebrows look like this, or her hair's like this. And I know that we don't have to wear hijab in front of women per se, but I just think that wearing correct hijab and having the understanding of it, like it changes your mentality towards your body. I think, like your body, you see your body as being more personal. It's something for you, and you're less like trying, like, especially because when you're going out and you're meeting people, you're less trying to like impress people with your physical figure. You're dressing to look decent. You want to look like a decent human being. You don't look like scruffy or something like that, but you dress so that you can be respectable, like not, I mean, and obviously that's going to range from person to person. Some people are more laid back or casual than others or whatever, but it depends on your kind of, circle or your environment that you're in, like the kind of dressing that you're going to do. But as a Muslim, you should look respectable, like as somebody that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided. You don't want to look like a crazy person when you're outside, but it takes away this kind of feminine, like this competition that goes on between sisters, like females, like all the time. SubhanAllah, I really SubhanAllah, like I'm glad you said that, because like for me that's like one of the big deals. Like literally, like SubhanAllah, I think it's sad. Like you see so many sisters, they have these issues, and even with a lot of sisters who are trying to wear the hijab but they're not wearing it correctly, this is their main issue. They're trying to hold on to this, like they're trying to like show their feminine beauty, show their figures, show their curves, while still wearing like a scarf or plastering their faces with makeup, because they're trying to fit into both boxes, and it's like, this is like, it's a test for them. They're bombarded with these images of what is beautiful, what is attractive, and they're told, maybe by their family, maybe by the people in the community, oh, you haven't found the husband because of this, you haven't found a husband because of that, or men want a woman that looks this kind of way, they want a woman this kind of body. So they're trying to, whether they fit into that category or not, they're trying to show themselves as much as possible to kind of fit into those perceptions or those ideals that people hold. And it's damaging, mentally damaging, spiritually damaging. People are not adhering to the Quran and the Sunnah, most of the time, because they're trying to live up to other people's expectations, and they're never going to reach them. It doesn't make you happy to be doing that. And this is what Islam came to like take away. Like it gives us, we're supposed to submit to the creator, not the creation. And that's what hijab is calling us to do: submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously the side effects of that and the other benefits of that is that, yes, we're not going to be, therefore meant to be able to gaze at lustfully because they can just see any part of us that they want to. And as well, as women, we shouldn't be looking at other women's bodies as well and comparing ourselves to other women's bodies and all this kind of things. So kind of like
Yes.
literally, and the covering at ourselves as well. Even, we shouldn't be showing off ourselves. Like, even if we feel that we are so beautiful, we should cover ourselves to protect, our own minds from having like maybe narcissistic or over or arrogantly kind of arrogant perceptions of ourselves or how great we think we are, because we're not that great. Like, that's the reality. Everybody's got their flaws and faults. So
Yes.
sometimes, like, literally, some of us love looking in the mirror and some of us don't. And for those, if you, yeah, but it's true though. Like, I remember growing up as a teen, like I hated looking in the mirror. I didn't find myself attractive at all. I just felt like, oh my god, like, okay. And then so I thought to myself, well, this is good. If I don't like looking in the mirror, then I don't have to waste time, because I know a lot of women, that's all they do. They look in the mirror, like, it takes them ages to get ready to leave the house. And it's just like, well, I don't have time for that. I don't like how I look. If I'm whether I'm attractive or not, I didn't see myself as being attractive. Even if somebody would tell me that that's what they thought, I didn't agree with them. So for me, it was just like, well, that just saves me time, because it means that when I'm leaving the house, I'm not going to take time to put on makeup and do all this fancy stuff. Just get my clothes on, make sure they're ironed and whatever, and just go about my business. But I've seen a lot of women that, like, they take, and I'm not criticizing women for trying to look nice and get ready, but this is one of the big fitness that women have, and
Hmm.
one of the challenges that are faced every single day, because, like, obviously most women are going to probably go outside every day, and if you're going outside and you have to spend an hour just to apply makeup, that's a headache. Like, literally, it's a headache. I've met sisters who, subhanallah, they ask straight question like, oh, can I do my wudu before I put makeup on, because, like, they don't want to have to, like, kind of redo their wudu
Yes.
because it's
Yeah.
going to affect their makeup and stuff. And you just think, subhanallah, like, it's that much for them. And, like, when you see the thick layers of foundation and the
Uh-huh.
mascara and all these kind of different things that they put on their faces, you just think, subhanallah, like, alhamdulillah that I didn't have this, like, trial. But, like, literally, for some sisters, that's like all they're about. And unfortunately, they seem to find men who sometimes feel that oh, their wife has to look like that. If she doesn't look like that, then, oh no, it's like, it's no longer acceptable to them. She's not meeting the standards, because they
Hmm.
they need their woman to look a particular way. And this is sad, and it affects people, their mental, mental progress, mental stability, emotional stability, spiritual stability as well, because too much focus is placed on outward appearances. I
Yes.
think that's yeah, it's just damaging, subhanallah.
I agree 100% with everything you said, and I'm glad that I'm not the only one who's had this experience, because I for the longest time just thought it was just, me, but I used to be one of those people that, like, I would look in the mirror when I was younger and I was just like, I am so ugly and I'm so fat and I don't like what I see. And now I look in the mirror after wearing niqab for, 15, 16 years, and I'm like, mashallah, and not in an arrogant way or not in a
Alhamdulillah.
narcissistic way, but yeah, but I've just come to this, like, I think people use the word like radical acceptance of, like my family, for
Yes.
example, and, like, I know, people haven't seen me because I wear niqab, but I have pictures of my sisters
Hmm.
on, who are non-Muslim and don't cover,
Hmm.
on my Instagram, and I love my sisters to death, and we all look very similar. And if there's one thing that people notice, and it's very noticeable, is that we have very large noses. Like, we have those, we say, like, the
Hmm.
Indian or like the Aztec nose. You're like the big,
Yes. Yes.
like the bump in the nose too. And I used to be so, and my
Hmm.
little sister too, like, we've talked about this because we've all had this issue. She's like, I wanted rhinoplasty from the time that I was like 10 years old. Like, I was bullied. She was like, I was
Hmm.
bullied about it in school. I wanted so bad to have a nose job. And now that I'm older, I'm just like, I love my nose so much. I can't believe I wanted to change it. And,
Alhamdulillah.
like, all three of us felt the same way. Like, really, really, alhamdulillah, we've all come to the realization that, or like, just like the total self-acceptance. And, like, and for me, of course, I believe is haram to do, plastic surgery just for
Yes.
changing the
Yes.
creation of Allah, not for any medical
Of
reason.
course.
Um,
Yes.
and
Subhanallah.
so yes, I would never do anything like that. But not only do I believe it's morally wrong, I also think that it's hurtful towards other women as well, because then it's the same thing as the whole
Definitely.
makeup. It's like you're giving men the idea that this is what women should or do look
Exactly.
like, and
Should look like. Yes.
that's not reality, right? And
Exactly.
then all the women who are natural
Exactly.
and real are getting compared to these photoshopped, airbrushed, 2 pounds of makeup,
Hmm.
non-real images. And so when women, and like you said, we don't have to wear hijab around each other. I find that when I'm with other
Hmm.
women, if it's just a room full of women and we're not wearing hijab, there's still no judgment in there, really, because I
Hmm.
feel like the judgment comes from when it's the competition thing, right? It's when you're in public and you see a sister wearing tighter clothes or more makeup, or she looks really, really beautiful. It's not just that you see her looking beautiful, it's the fact that you notice that men are seeing her look beautiful, and then those men are going to look at you and say, oh, that's less beautiful, right? So that is
Hmm.
where the competition and the hatred amongst women comes from. But if we were all, like you said, if we're all wearing proper hijab, then men wouldn't be seeing us in the first place. Even if it was just us in our own room,
Exactly.
we wouldn't be comparing ourselves to each other, because the men aren't going to see us anyway. So even if a sister
Exactly.
takes off her hijab and I'm like, mashallah, your hair is gorgeous, doesn't matter, because it's not like my husband's going to see it and then all of a sudden be like, how come your hair isn't as gorgeous? So it takes away that intra-female competition when we protect not just our personal selves, but we protect other women as well from the gazes of men when we say, no, I'm not going to give you something to compare her to.
Exactly. And that's really so important. And I really like what you mentioned there about even, the issue about your nose, how you didn't like your nose previously. And now you're older, you've got that appreciation. And I think that it's something beautiful, because this is the thing, and this is the danger with the whole gender ideology as well, is that, somebody might feel a certain way when they're young. And then as they age, their mind changes, or they see things from a different perspective, or they're maturing, they're growing, so they understand the world in a different way as well. But if you make your full focus on your physical appearance and your looks, and you decide you're going to take these drastic steps to change your appearance, you suffer for it later on.
Yes.
When if you'd not had that as your focus in your youth, when Savannah, there's so many other things that we can be doing in our youth, especially because we're usually, obviously we're younger, but we're usually more fit, usually more mentally alert. There's so much more, so much benefits of youth that we have a lot of drive, a lot of passion, to do things. Want to we've got so many opportunities when you're young, maybe less responsibility as well. You could be
Yes.
focused on 100 other things other than what you look like. But by making, or pushing the young people to focus on their physical appearance specifically, and even sexuality as well, this is
Hmm.
it's huge detriment to what a young person can actually be able to achieve. And basically, contribute to the world in a positive way, because they're focused just on their own physical appearance, and that's it, that's as far as it goes. And then taking
Yes.
steps to do things to themselves which are horrific. And unfortunately, we live in a society and a time when often people are not learning from the mistakes of others. They insist on going and making their own mistakes, even if it is a mistake that other people have already done hundreds and hundreds of times. So that's another issue.
Yes.
We need more good examples, more young people who are stepping up and being positive role models to their peers. But unfortunately, it's very few and far between that we're having that. And I think this is where Islam is encouraging, you know especially for people like us who came to Islam in our teens. It's that kind of puts us back on track. It takes us from, instead of spending our whole, our youth, in our 20s, for example, doing foolishness. Because obviously you can do some crazy things when you're a teenager, but at least I know from my experience it was like that. But alhamdulillah, because I became Muslim when I was 18, this kind of, it just put a stop immediately to all the rubbish, all the foolishness. So I didn't waste my 20s going around doing nonsense. I already had a
Alhamdulillah.
family. That my
Yes.
marriage did break down, yes, but at the same time I had my children. And they and my religion kept me focused on what is important in life, what are the things that really matter, like how can I be developing myself as an individual and going forward to make a positive contribution to the world. And even if it's not to the world specifically, just to my family itself, to my community, my small community, wherever I am. you know like So these
Yes.
things are important, and that's what young people should be focusing on, subhanallah. So all these things are just distraction. Unfortunately, it's not helpful, and it's not progressive, even though they believe that it's progressive. They're focusing on completely the wrong things, because there's never been a point in time in history where the societies that have focused on sexuality and sex and have thrived. It's always been the downfall of the society, if anything.
Yes, and if I add something onto that, there's never ever been a point in time where we have said kids know who they are. Believe the kids when they say that they're, when your 5-year-old
Exactly.
says that they're trans, like we've always said, and just like everything you just said, I can sum it up in our most famous phrase, right? Youth is wasted on the young, right? It really is, and you
Yeah,
don't realize that until you're older, and you realize, you look at pictures.
exactly.
And I'm happy with myself now. I look at myself now with more love, and I'm so happy in my body. I never felt this kind of happiness when I was in high school. And yet I look at pictures of
Mm-hmm.
myself in high school and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I was as thin as I was when I first started thinking I was fat, because I wasn't fat at all, And
Yes,
it's like, but
subhanallah.
now that I am, 10, 15 pounds heavier, and I'm like, damn, I'm fine, like
Yeah,
it's
alhamdulillah.
so interesting that
Alhamdulillah.
I've really I've come to this conclusion, that I'm fine, even though I'm, objectively, not, maybe not as objectively attractive as I was when I was, 17, 18 years old, or when I first got married, but I appreciate myself so much more now. And I've learned so
Alhamdulillah.
much and realized even, and this is the thing too, is like, keep in mind, I graduated from high school when I was 15 and moved out of the
Mm,
house when I was 15 and became Muslim when I was 15.
Allah.
And even as somebody
Alhamdulillah.
who was so, yes, really, alhamdulillah, but even as somebody who was so, what others would consider to be very mature from such a young age, I still look back and say, I know so much more now. And I'm so glad that I wasn't
Cool.
allowed to make decisions like this, when I was 13, 14, even 15 years old. Like, even accepting Islam is not, it's not like I permanently did a change to my body. It was choosing a
Mm,
lifestyle, but I wasn't injecting myself with hormones and stuff. And now the things that we are allowing the youth to do to destroy themselves, to literally decide to sterilize themselves at 12, 13 years old before they even
yeah,
know,
subhanallah.
the impacts of that. It really is. It is, subhanallah. It just makes me cringe when I think that I could have been in that situation, knowing that I always wanted to
Exactly.
be a mother, always wanted to be a mother. And that's
Yes,
been, when
subhanallah.
I watch,
Subhanallah.
really, I watch Chloe Cole. I don't know if you've seen her stuff, but she's one of the most prominent detransitioners right now, who I believe had a double mastectomy at like 13 years old and was on
Subhanallah.
hormones from the time she was like, ridiculously young. Um, and then now she, I think at like 18 or 19, she was like, wow, this whole thing was a mistake. And one of the things that made her realize it was a mistake was the fact that she said, I want to be a mom. I've always wanted to be a mom. And even the whole time that I
Subhanallah.
was convinced that I was a man, I still wanted to be a mom, and I was like, wow, that
Subhanallah.
could have been me. It 100% could have been me. And it's just
Mm,
so sad that that is happening to people nowadays. We really do need to, I always use the example, and it's funny, but it's not funny, because this is literally what people are doing when they're like, oh, my, 3, 4-year-old, whatever, said that they're, the opposite sex. My son always used to say, my son had that problem. He had gender dysphoria when he
mm,
was like 2 and 3. He would constantly tell me that he wanted to be a woman and that he was going to grow up to be a woman. And he would
mm,
cry when I told him he wasn't going to have a baby come out of him and he couldn't give
mhm,
birth and things like that. Like, it took years for him to
mhm.
accept that he's a little boy. But, when he was like 3 or 4 years old, I asked him, to self-identify and tell me, are you a baby or are you a little boy now? And you know what he told me? He told me he was a duck and proceeded to quack for 5 minutes. Okay. Because he's a
Subhanallah.
kid. Like, he doesn't know, really. And it was the
Subhanallah.
cutest verbal thing. But the fact of the
He's a
matter is,
doctor.
yeah, he was a duck, and then he quacked for like 5 minutes, and I was just like, okay,
Wow.
that's, that tells you the extent of his self-perception. He's just a
Mhm,
kid. And the fact that people are asking kids his age, are you a boy or a girl? And they say, I'm a girl. And they're like, okay, let's go get you a dress. Okay, let's put you on, we'll make sure that you get on puberty blockers in a few years. Like, no. And you don't have to be as, because, I realize he doesn't have a father in the picture. He was literally locked in the
mm,
house with me and my mom for all of his formative years, because it was COVID. He
mhm,
didn't go to school. He didn't have anything.
mm.
He had never seen a man before. And so he had to be
Subhanallah.
exposed to, like, this is what a man is, and this is what you were going to grow up
Yes.
into. And it doesn't
Mhm,
make you a freak at all. And you can be just like
mhm.
his thing. I realized too, is like, he loves me so much and wants to be like me so much. It's funny
Of
that the
course, this
things
is
that,
what happens.
Yeah. Yes, they want to be like their mom. And the funny thing is that
Exactly.
people would consider me a pretty masculine woman. Like one of the things that
Yes,
he
yes.
was really
Mm-hmm.
dead set on is that when I had my motorcycle, he was like, I want to ride a motorcycle like mama. And he thought that like if he grew up to be something else that he couldn't do those things. And I'm like, you can do, I
Mm,
had, as an adult, had to be the one to tell him, you can do anything you want to do when you grow up. And in fact, you know what? More men ride motorcycles than women, but you don't have to be either
mm-hmm.
sex to do that. That is not a gender
Exactly.
thing. You can be a woman and ride a motorcycle. You can be
Exactly.
a man and ride a motorcycle, and that you can be like mommy, and so you can do what I do for work. He's like, I want to do what you do. Okay, you can do all of that, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have a period or have a baby come out of you or be a woman.
Exactly. It
You're
doesn't
not.
mean you're
That's
a
not going to
woman.
happen.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so I had to explain that to him. And like once that paired with the fact that, my sister who moved in with us after some time, her husband also came to live with us. And when he was exposed to a male figure in his life, all of a
Mm,
sudden he's like, okay, men aren't this terrible, like, freaky thing, and they're not this, concept. He could actually see this man in front of him who was a great man and a wonderful part of our family. And that when he around the time that my brother-in-law became part of our family and started helping me, because he did help me take care of my son, and he would sometimes bring him to school and stuff, and he'd help watch over him when I was working. Once that happened,
mm-hmm.
my son stopped saying that he wanted to be a woman. He stopped crying about the fact that he was not a girl.
Absolutely.
And so I think,
Absolutely.
yes, these things have such, I don't want to say that they're always this easy and straightforward solutions, but there are
Mm-hmm.
so many solutions to these, feelings. And these are legitimate feelings. Like, I am not criticizing people
Definitely.
who struggle with gender dysphoria,
Mm-hmm.
because I myself have been there. My son was there, but there's just so many better options that we need to go through before we jump to, okay, maybe this is so severe. You are under such mental distress, and you've been with this distress for 25, 30 years. Maybe transitioning is an option for you. Like, that is not something that you need to jump to at 5 years old. And I think that our society is, and
Exactly.
the whole
That's
gender,
not the
yeah,
answer.
it's
It's
ridiculous.
not the
Yes.
answer. It's a way
Yes.
of culling. I think it's a way of culling the population without
Hmm.
just killing them,
Hmm.
basically, directly.
Exactly. And
And
sterilizing
not
them.
only
Yeah.
that, but having a new generation that's going to have to spend their whole lives on drugs,
Medication.
basically,
Yep.
because
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Yep. I'm
basically
with you there.
what is happening. It's
Yes.
really traumatic and sad, to be honest, because like subhanallah, like you just think about it as well, like for parents who kind of don't do what you did with your son and actually just explain to him in simple terms and are
Hmm.
encouraging their children. Like, I can't imagine that. What kind of relationship are those parents going to have with those children as when they become adults, if they reach adulthood? Subhanallah, like, the fact that your parent actually did that to you, because that's what's happening. It's
Hmm.
literally an abuse. Some
Yes.
parents, they're,
Yes.
I don't know, like they're using their children as like tools for either seeking fame or attention, or that, just I
Yes.
don't know, like it's sick.
100%.
Subhanallah, it's really sick and sad. Subhanallah.
And the sad part of this is that the people that are being targeted for these are the ones of us who are struggling with either asexuality or homosexuality, and then they're given this option, this
Mm-hmm.
false hope that you can just switch sexes, you could just switch genders or whatever, and you can just be the opposite sex. And maybe children who are also same, or young adults who are realizing that they're same sex attracted are falling into this as well,
Mm,
instead of. And I feel for them so much, because there are people in our Muslim ummah who are same-sex attracted and who are living according to the sunnah, and
mm-hmm,
they realize that this is a test for
mm-hmm.
them. And there are
Exactly.
and then there are, yeah, people who choose other ways and other routes of life. But the fact of the matter is, we are, as people who are not heterosexual, we are the main targets for this, what's happening, this abuse that's happening. And it's very, very sad that people don't see it for what it is.
Absolutely, absolutely. SubhanAllah. Okay, so yeah, mashallah, we've been talking a good while now, and I'm sure you've got other things to do. I'm going to try to wrap up the conversation. It's been really good, actually, because I think it's important. And I hope that, inshallah, the sisters do benefit from this, because it's not like something that, we talk about every day on here, obviously. And I'm
Yes.
sure that there's maybe some people are going to be maybe surprised even that we've tried to kind of talk about this topic. But I feel that it's really important, because it is affecting a lot of Muslims now. I've seen sisters who are having these kind of issues with their children, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Hmm.
So I think it's really, really important to talk about these things, and especially with regards to like the Islamic perspective and how Islam can help,
Yes.
to actually, navigate through that. Because
Yes.
that's what's beautiful about Islam. Like, even when you was talking about your son, you explained to him that, you don't need to be a woman in order to ride a bike or to work where you work and things like that. This,
Mhm.
like in Islam, we have like so many, we have so many examples of even like, female companions. They used to ride horses. They used to do like lots of different types of things. And now, unfortunately, in the Muslim community, there's some circles where the men are trying to say like, oh well, if a woman is riding a motorbike, then she's trying to be masculine, or she goes to the gym, she's trying to be masculine. It's just like, well, actually, she's not. These things are just normal things that everyday people do. It's nothing to do with being masculine at all.
Oh
But
my goodness, sister. I am
of course,
so glad you said that because that's honestly the
absolutely some
last thing,
false
like,
premises.
before you even but like, I know we've been talking for a long time and we want to wrap things up, but I was literally going to say, just let me throw one last thing in here because I think like one of the biggest, if we talk about challenges facing asexual people
Mhm.
in the Muslim
Yes,
community specifically, what you said is literally what I was going to say, that there are some people in the Muslim community who want to shove like the sexes into really tight little boxes that Islam itself
false,
does
and it's
not promote.
ridiculous.
Right. As Islam
You won't
is
find
a
that in the
religion for
Sunnah. That's what I'm
everybody.
saying. You don't find that in the Sunnah at all. It's so ridiculous. SubhanAllah, I saw a
Exactly.
video, and a brother was basically saying that a sister shouldn't be going to the gym, and these sisters who want to go to the gym and they're training in the gym and lifting weights 3 times a week, they're going to end up looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was just like, wallahi, I was so angry. Wallahi, I was so angry from seeing the video, because I just thought, the ignorance the brother was talking. I thought, SubhanAllah, that I know
Yes.
sisters who are personal trainers, who work out, who lift weights. I'm not a gym person myself, but I love working out. So I've always worked out at home. And
Hmm.
I like, the kind of martial arts workout, where you're doing a lot of press ups and, lifting, maybe you put doing pull ups and these kind of things, which, and they do help build your body. But as a woman, like, I'm sorry, somebody who says what the brother said, that if your sister's going to the gym and, lifting weights 3 times a week, she's going to look, it's absolute nonsense. It shows that you, as a brother, you don't even know what it means to build muscle or to work
Exactly.
out. Because even a man, a brother, even if a man whose body is designed to naturally build muscle a lot quicker than a woman, he would have to 3 times a week is not going to make him build muscle. He's going to have to do a lot more than that. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Like, so
Yep.
a woman, like, if a woman wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, she's gonna have to put in literally 7 days a week. She's gonna have to do some serious, intense training.
Oh, and
Doing
she'd
what,
have to be
lifting a few
using
weights.
steroids. Yeah, you would have to be shooting up
Exactly.
some major steroids to be able to, for a woman
Literally
to look like that.
lifting
Yes.
lifting a few weights,
Yes.
like, if even if you do 5 days a week lifting weights in a gym for, I don't know, half an hour sets or 20-minute sets, your body's not gonna become like hard and bulked up, and you're
Yes.
just gonna become
Uh-huh.
more stronger, which, as women, we need to be strong. And if we look at
Hmm.
the seerah, the history of Islam and the companion stuff like that, we see the type of work that a lot of the women were doing at that time was heavy lifting work, because the men were out doing other things, and the women had to
Hmm.
do work because there was, in just to work in the home, which it made their bodies, like, have like marks on it. Even like the daughter of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima radiallahu anha, she had, I remember she said that she had like been carrying like sacks of water or something like that. I think it was the leather sacks full of water. This is not something which is light. These are heavy things. So if you, as a woman, don't have like that physical strength in order to perform your daily tasks, which unfortunately a lot of sisters now don't, because they're living a lifestyle which, kind of, Western lifestyle is very like easy compared to most places. You're not going to be doing hard lifting in your day-to-day, housework most of the time, because you've got so many kind of tools that's made now to make your housework chores easier. Not saying that it's, simple, but it's not like in the old days when you had to go and fetch the water from the well, and like you're carrying pots. And I live in West Africa now, so I see women here that are doing, you know all these kind of work, the chores, the cooking, the cleaning, and their bodies, just from doing those housework, their bodies are like the body of the woman that goes to the gym in the West, like on a regular basis.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? She's not working
Yeah,
out
mashallah.
separately. Her body looks like that naturally because of that housework that she's doing, because
Hmm.
that's the amount of strength that it requires, you know. And subhanAllah, and
Hmm.
everybody's got different forms. So some women are bigger than others, some are small, some are, some are large, somewhere in
Yes.
between. And depending on a woman's body, like, some might look a bit more muscular and some less muscular. It just depends. But they don't look like men because of if they've got a little bit of, tone to their body. They just look like women, and they're doing women's work. They're not trying to do the men's work. That's not how it is over here. So it's like when he was talking like that, I just thought, like, subhanAllah, like, I really, wallahi, I just got so angry because the amount of ignorance, like, you're spouting this kind of ignorance, and then young brothers who aren't married, they're listening to this, and then if their wife decides one day that she wants to go to the gym because, oh, she just had a baby maybe like a few months before, and she's feeling really weak, and she wants to build her body back up so that she can be ready to maybe have another child, he's going to say, oh no, because that's, you're trying to look like a man, and men are supposed to go to the gym and you can't go to the gym. Like, so I just like, it's
Really,
just such
really,
ignorance, it's really
yes.
silly. It's
I
really silly things, like.
yes, I heard it's terrible. I heard a very similar talk that also made me angry the other day. Listening to this brother talk about how he believes it's a misconception that that Khadija was a businesswoman, and that what the real history is, according to him, is that she inherited all of this wealth and then just had other people do things for her, and she was this good submissive woman who never left the house and never worked and never ran a business. And I was just like, okay, bro, clearly you've never been to business school. I mean, I know that most people haven't. I'm a CPA. I know I've been to business school. Yes, when you are running a business, you do delegate things out to other people. That doesn't
Exactly.
mean that you just write your orders down on a piece of paper and slide them under the door to some man and you never leave your room. Like that's
Exactly.
not what
Literally.
happened, right? And for him to sit there and talk bad, and he was literally talking about like how sisters who are how you say, like, want to have an entrepreneurial mindset or a business mindset, that this is imitating men, exactly like you were saying, that this is imitating men, and they should only want to be housewives, and they should only want to be in their homes. And it was so disgusting to hear that kind of talk, because we have to
Nonsense.
also realize it's nonsense, number one, but number two, even within Islam, I know that there is a hadith. I don't believe it's from Rasulullah. I believe it's from one of the early Sahaba, talking about how there are two different types of effeminate men, that there is a type of effeminate men that is not haram, that this is the way that Allah made him, that he is naturally feminine in his mannerisms, in his speech, in his whatever, and that there's no sin on him because that is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him. And then the other type is the one who is purposely imitating women for the purpose of tempting other men and doing illicit things. And so we know that there's a difference there. And I think people don't, like, nowadays we are too rigid in our, like, I will say, as much as I'm against all of gender ideology and the whole LGBTQ agenda, I will say that they are too far to one side, and it's abhorrent, and it does not fit in with Islam. But some Muslim people are also much too restrictive. And then, just like you said, this can cause rebellion when you're trying to shove somebody into a box that they don't fit into. And so I think it's very important that we realize, just like some men are naturally more effeminate, and there's nothing wrong with that, some women are naturally more masculine. And I've been criticized because, like I said, as an asexual, people think that I'm a lesbian sometimes. I had the other day, which is really weird. I don't know. I mean, everybody thinks their voice sounds weird. When you hear yourself talk, you're like, that's what I sound like. But I had some woman the other day, I called my son's school, and she was like, are you talking through a voice synthesizer? And I was like, no. But I've had several people like say that my voice is kind of deep or something, or that, that other, like in terms of my mannerisms or my behavior, that I'm kind of masculine. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not putting these things on. I am not trying to masculinize myself. I naturally, like, I love motorcycles. It's something that I've always loved. I love airplanes. I love fishing. I love putting things together. I'm the DIY person in my house. Whenever my mom's got shelves to put up, or like things that you would stereotypically say, like, ask the man to do it. Like, there's no man in my house, and everybody knows I'm the one. Like, even when my brother-in-law was there, I'm the one that's putting stuff together. I'm the one that's putting furniture together, moving furniture around. I love that kind of thing.
It's been the same with me too. Like, literally, because I remember, like, I learned so many things from my granddad when I was growing up. But at the same time, my granddad was a mechanic, and he was a carpenter as well. So I learned lots of things from him as a child. And at the same time, if I wasn't with my granddad, I would be with my grandma in the kitchen and learning how to bake and do all those other types of stuff. So I've always liked doing things with my hands in general. I just like, I'm a DIY person too. And I don't think there's anything like, I say I don't think there's anything masculine about it. Obviously, there's a masculine element to it. But I think that if you're somebody who likes to be at home in general, it's handy to know how to do these things. It doesn't make sense to me that you're somebody who loves being at home like I do and not know how to do things that you need to do in the house, because you need to do more in the house than just cooking and cleaning. You know what I mean? So my son, alhamdulillah, he's learned how to do these things from me.
That's
And my daughters
very good.
also learned how to do those things as well, you know. So, and you know what I mean, so it's just like this, there's no kind of, you know, this is something, it's normal, like it's part of living. It's, these are life skills. That's what I call them, life skills. They don't have
Yes.
to be strictly applicable to one gender, you know, but it's good if both know it. And it's good, like, obviously, like, even for example, cooking is another one, because like some of these
Hmm.
brothers, subhanallah, you, they talk about cooking like, as if to say that it's not, it's something that men don't do. But if we look at the top chefs in the world, majority of them are men.
Yep.
That's the
Uh-huh.
reality. So, you know, and I'm sure he, like,
Yes.
and they're not like, they're, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't call Gordon Ramsay a homosexual, because he
Yeah,
definitely is. You
seriously.
know,
And
subhanallah, like,
his husband was a way
it's
better cook than I
true.
was for sure. And I feel like, and then business wise, of course, I'm incredibly entrepreneurial minded. And, you know, I love my job as a CPA and everything, but I also have plans to open my own business in the future that inshallah I'll be able to open it up in a few
Inshallah.
years. And I have so many plans and so many things that I want to do. And I just will never forget, like, going in to the mosque. I mean, I'm not going to name which one, but a major mosque in a major city in the US. And I went in, you know, I used to go in pretty regularly, but when I don't even remember when. Oh, I had to get my certificate. I was told by the sheikh that because I took my shahada just like with a group of people and I didn't have like a certificate, that I probably wouldn't be able to do Hajj with that because you know, my name is not Muslim and I'm not from a Muslim country. So he was like, yeah, let me give you a certificate so that says that you did your shahada, so you have some
Wow.
proof, you know. And so I'm like, okay. So
Hmm.
he offered to do this for me, and then we were
Yes,
talking,
yes.
and just somehow he realized that the motorcycle in the parking lot was mine, and then it became this half an hour long speech about how this is unacceptable, and we're
Hmm.
gonna pull money from the mosque funds and get you a car, like you can't be riding a motorcycle. And you know, there's a case that maybe he was thinking about safety or something, but there's just a large part of me that thinks if I was a man, you wouldn't be sitting here lecturing me about this, you know, and about
Yes,
riding a
yes,
motorcycle.
subhanallah.
And yes, our community does need to open up a little bit. And I'm not saying that we need to, you know, accept same-sex relationships or any type of haram relationship. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is we also need to understand that in addition to some men being naturally feminine and some women being more naturally masculine inclined, either in terms of behavior or even in terms of physical, I know some pretty masculine looking women, and they didn't, you know, they're not at the gym working out all the time, but they're just very masculine looking. You
Exactly.
know, this can happen both
Literally,
ways.
that's that.
This is the way Allah made them. We are perfect the way that Allah
Exactly.
made us, and the community. And even if the person does struggle with same-sex attraction, that does not automatically make them a non-Muslim or make them a sinner.
Of
And I
course
think that
it
our
doesn't.
community
Of
does need
course.
to open up on that. Hmm.
Exactly, exactly. Because it's acting on it. If it's only if you act on, you know, the desires. It's just like somebody who, for example, maybe somebody has a very strong sex drive. If the person is acting on that outside of marriage, then that's when it's haram, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
but
And that's men or women,
if
it's the
you have
same
those,
rule. Hmm.
exactly, exactly. If you have those urges and you don't act on them, like you're obviously you're faced with the test and the trial, but you're trying your best, you're fasting and you're doing all the things that you can to like stop yourself from falling into the sin. That's what everybody has to do with, you know, regardless of what it is, we all have our different individual tests and we all have to, you know, try our best to, you know, stop like our desires or stop trying to like, you know, falling into them or becoming victim to our own desires, subhanallah. You know,
Yes. And
even like the issue of the bike thing as well, you know, I wanted to say like that's what you mentioned about the bikes and the same talk that I heard that brother was saying, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous because he was saying that women shouldn't train martial arts either, and I was just like, what are you talking about? But I said, well, subhanallah, if we look at the even like subhanallah, if we look at Asian women, like, you know, Southeast Asia and, well, you know, Korea, Japan, these kind of countries where like martial arts originated from, I'm just saying like in
mhm.
general, like when men talk about women and femininity and the kind of stereotypes, ideas that they're trying to like put on women in general, the Asian woman comes to my mind.
Yes.
Why? Because she is very feminine in that respect. You know, she's very like, you know, she does the, you know, she's that's the culture, how it is, like doing the housework, being mother, like all this kind of like things. But at the same time, these women, they're martial artists. They know how to do like the, you know, different things in the house, like the DIY jobs, stuff like that. You see things like this online, like subhanallah, they're very feminine women, but they do all these things. They do the martial arts. They're working out in the gym, but their bodies don't get big and bulky. And I just thought, like, you know, the stereotypes that, you know, some people are trying to like push on others, they're just lies, like literally, because they don't even ring true for most women
Yes.
anyway, you know, and like you're giving men this false idea and it's just damaging, you know. So I just thought it was just ridiculous because if you'd see a lot of the sisters, like I see online a lot of posts from sisters in like Indonesia, Malaysia, like Niqabis or hijabis, and they're all riding motorbikes and mopeds. Like that's normal over there. It's completely
Mm-hmm.
normal. No, like literally, that's
Yes.
how they travel around. That's the staple for them. So it
Yeah.
doesn't make, and nobody's saying that they're not feminine. Do you know what I mean? SubhanAllah.
Exactly. And I just think our community, that's one thing that we need to work on. Like, if we want to call people to Islam, we cannot have the topic of homosexual attraction or asexual attraction be so taboo that, like, I can't tell you how many times where, because I'm unmarried and I'm considered an quote unquote eligible bachelorette in the community, lots of people approached me, have approached me at different communities that I've been in and said, oh, you're not married and so is interested in, and I've confided in a few sisters and told them, look, like, I appreciate you, looking for me or anything, but the fact of the matter is I don't like men, and I've seen that brother. I'm not interested in talking to him. And when I say I don't like men,
Mm-hmm.
like, their first assumption is that I'm a lesbian, and you should see some of the looks I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten, or them, totally falling back and just being like shock on their face. And I feel like if we in our community, and then I have to be like, yo, calm down, I'm not a lesbian. But even if I was, I wish that you wouldn't have that reaction, because there probably are,
Mm-hmm.
lesbian or gay men out there who are interested in Islam, and maybe our attitudes towards people with same-sex attraction is something that's keeping them from coming to the mosque and asking about Islam, becoming part of the community. And so I just want to reiterate, Islam is for everybody. That includes the asexual and the homosexual people. And,
Mm-hmm.
it is our test. And, I'm not sitting here trying to, get in on the LGBTQ agenda or push any type of haram activity
Mm-hmm.
at all. But I'm saying that
Mm-hmm.
we as Muslims need to be much more open-minded and to other people's struggles.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm just going to reiterate what you just said. None of us are promoting homosexuality in any kind of way, so just don't get that twisted. But what the sisters clearly say is that some people are tested by Allah with having certain, inclinations, and they are not allowed to act on it. It's only when you act on it that's when you have done haram. Like, we're not punished for having thoughts. We're
Mm-hmm.
punished for our actions. Subhanallah. So, and that's when that's where the mistakes are made. So we're not saying that it's okay to be homosexual, or to actually act out on homosexual tendencies. We're not, advocating for Kalmulut. Really, that's not what this is. Okay, so
Absolutely
just
not. But I am
to
just
make
saying,
sure everybody listening understands that.
yes, but we just need to be more open-minded in terms of each other's struggles and not judging each other and welcoming each
Exactly.
other to the community. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, I hope that's super clear. I'm sure that some people are going to get upset with things I said regardless. So you too. I mean, there's going to be men out there, the sheikh, right? The sheikhs who are talking about how women shouldn't be leaving out of the home. But I'm sure they're going to, come for me regardless. And they always do, right? As soon as I say I'm not interested in marriage, or they see one thing that they think is masculine about me, all of a sudden it's haram. But that's hopefully those people are the minority, or they stay away, or educate
Well,
themselves.
I don't know about these people. I don't know about these people. Like, as I said, I was single for 12 years, okay, and I, like, literally, I might say that maybe in 12 years I had 12 suitors. Maybe
Really?
it
I'm
wasn't.
gonna
I
make a
wasn't. There were
video, okay?
nobody was banging down my door telling me that I
I
need to be married. Like,
you
subhanallah, and
know,
I was always
I've
open
got
to marriage. So
screenshots,
it's just
girl.
like,
I have
okay,
proof. And I'm gonna make a video one of these days. That's
subhanallah.
actually one of the videos that I wanted to make, is the ridiculous things that Muslim men have said to me online, and just kind of pick through things one by one so we can get some
Oh,
facts straight.
definitely.
I have screenshots, but it'd take a long time to, because this is going, years back. I've been single for 4 years now. So over the past 4 years, with over probably 200 or 250, different inbox requests from
Subhanallah. That's
people, I
like,
have taken,
wow,
yeah, it's insane. It's insane. But I've
wow.
got screenshots from the most ridiculous ones, and the most I don't want to say like least halal ones, or or it's just the
Perverse.
worst in
Yes,
general. Like, I need to make a video on, like, how to talk to women, because I swear, sister, I
definitely.
have not even assalamu alaikum, nothing. Just, hi, are you married? I'm looking for a relationship. Like, half of them start off like that.
Wow.
Just like, so it's like, men, like, we need some help in our ummah, because I support marriage, of course. I realize the benefits of marriage. I wish my son had a father. Like, marriage is such a pillar of our community that is in shambles right now. And I think
Definitely.
that we've got a lot of work to do to get people married and keep people married too, right? To avoid divorce should be our number one thing as
Absolutely.
well. But that's a whole nother topic. But as an asexual person, I still, as a Muslim, understand the importance of all of these things and agree as an asexual
Mm-hmm.
person. So I just know that I'm
Alhamdulillah.
not out there trying to, say marriage is not necessary for anyone or for anyone. It certainly is. Even for asexual people, there's huge benefits to marriage, and just plug for
Mm-hmm.
marriage in general. All right.
And that's the thing. There's even plenty of people who are not asexual, but they're just happy not being married. That's the
Mhm.
reality. And they've accepted them. Not only that, maybe some people they want to get married, but they just haven't found anybody suitable. And that was my case for a very long time. And I wasn't prepared to just accept any kind of proposal just because this person says that this guy's going to be good because like subhanallah, like I'm not that kind of person that can be married to anyone. I know that. So I wasn't
Mhm.
prepared
Same
to
here.
just get married for the sake of it. I think that that's what causes a lot of people to end up getting divorced, or causes a lot of people to be in marriages where maybe the marriage is technically on paper a good marriage, but the person doesn't feel fulfilled, or they don't feel that they're thriving in the marriage, when the person might even be a really good person, but they're just not able to really be truly themselves. So they kind of like feel almost maybe stunted in their growth, or just not free, and to express themselves. And having children in that situation, your children always know that
Mhm.
you're hiding. You know what I mean? Like there's things that children pick up from their parents, that they and understand from their parents, that even though the parents might try to hide certain things, it's evident to the children. And that kind of those vibes, that or that energy that is kind of given off from the parents themselves, is what can put children themselves off the idea of even wanting to be married as well. So I think that's really important, that people try to pay attention to that too, because a lot of young people, they're against the idea of getting married now because of the examples that they've had from their parents. Basically, that's what it comes down to. It's not because they just don't want to get married. They're worried, or they're scared to get married, or they don't want to get married because they've just had negative examples. And that doesn't mean that they've even been raised in a house where there's been domestic abuse, for example. It could just be that they've seen that their parents are both miserable, so they
Mhm.
equate marriage to
Yes.
having a miserable life, or having a life where you don't fulfill your dreams, or like whatever the case may be. So yeah,
Yes.
subhanallah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very true.
subhanallah. We could talk for ages, and I really would love to talk to you again. Like, I know that there's so many other things we could talk about, so I definitely would love to
Oh,
have you on
inshallah.
again, inshallah.
Oh,
Oh
thank you
gosh,
so
yeah, but
much.
I'm looking forward to your video. Really, I'd love to see some of the comments that
Oh
brothers
my
have sent to you. Subhanallah. No, I think it's important to talk about these things, because I'm sorry, some people need to be shamed. Even if I'm not saying like put their names all out there, but
No, no, yeah.
people need to see. People need to see the kind of things that like brothers are doing to Muslim sisters, because it's just like, I'm
Yes.
sorry, like the sisters are getting shamed a lot online now, and I know it's not a competition of like who can shame the most, but it needs to be
Yes.
said, like sisters who are practicing, who are trying to practice their religion properly, and adhere to Quran and Sunnah and everything, and then you get these so-called practicing brothers who are just like doing all sorts of nonsense, and nobody's calling them up on like,
Mm,
or trying to straighten them out on what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? The sisters are getting the
yes.
criticism all the time. Oh, the problem must be with you. Well, no, not necessarily. The problem is with the brothers. They're the ones that are supposed to be the Qawam, the leaders of the community. But is this what they're doing, really? Even with sisters who are correctly, like, observing hijab, like, subhanAllah, like, this is just, if they can be like that with a Niqabi sister, then like, what about the ones who are not wearing Niqab, who are not wearing hijab even? Subhanallah, like,
Mm,
it
oh,
doesn't
yeah. We could go on
even
forever
bring
about that.
conversation.
That could be a whole
Exactly.
'nother
Like,
2-hour long
literally,
conversation. Mhm.
subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. So, okay, so inshallah, any final thoughts? What would you say, like, your last message, like, to end the interview, to, like, to the Muslim community specifically, about asexual people? What's the main thing you would like them to understand, to
Um,
kind of help avoid, misconceptions?
Right, just that we exist, honestly, that comes
Mhm,
to, the biggest misconceptions about asexuality within and outside of the Muslim Ummah. This is something that is just in general a problem, is that people don't even know that asexual people exist. We're often confused with incels, or we're confused with people who are celibate,
mm,
either voluntarily or
yeah.
involuntarily. And of course, we don't have celibacy in Islam, so that's a thing. And of course, like I said, if I say I don't like men, people all say, "Oh my God, you're lesbian!" And number one, that shouldn't
Hmm.
be your reaction, even if I am a lesbian. And number two,
Hmm.
you should know that there is another option out there. Asexual people, just we
Hmm.
exist, and we are a part of the community, and we have our own struggles. And that's it. That's in short what I'd like people to know.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Barakallah feekum, sister. So, inshallah, I'm going to put the link in the description to your video talking about your kind of experience, because I think that's really like valuable, just to let people have another like kind of idea of how you've navigated through this, you know, from your teenage years to into adulthood as well, alhamdulillah. But yeah, jazakallah khair for enlightening us with you know, a few of these things, and I hope that if there's any other sisters who are listening right now that, you know, they have similar experience, or maybe they know somebody who's facing these kind of challenges, especially in these times with young people in general, and they could be at risk because of you know, people misunderstanding, you know, like their, you know, what they're going through, then please like reach out and let us know, and inshallah maybe we can get you some kind of, you know, kind of is advice or help, inshallah, because definitely like we don't want any of our young people cutting parts of their bodies off and things like that unnecessarily, inshallah. So yeah, just reach out, inshallah.